The Story of the Secret Garden. Mary Lennox lived in India, a very warm and bright country. But one very sad day she was sent to England, where her uncle Lord Craven lived. She was met at the train station by Mrs. Medlock, who worked for Mary's uncle, and together they traveled to Misselthwaite Manor on a foggy night. The enormous building was dark and spooky, and it felt to Mary as if she were lost on the edge of the moor. Mrs. Medlock, who was the housekeeper of the manor, abruptly left Mary with Martha, the young housemaid. Martha was nice. She brought Mary a good dinner and some warm clothes. Mary, however, was very spoiled. She woke up in the morning and coldly commanded Martha, "Dress me." This was the custom in India. Her ayah washed her and dressed her every morning. Days went by. Mary felt so bored. Her uncle was never home, and she had nobody to play with. It was a very cold and rainy winter. One day, Martha gave her a skipping rope. "Why don't you try it? You could wander through the gardens," she cheerfully said to Mary. While she was wandering in the gardens, Mary saw a robin on a tree behind a brick wall. There was a door, but it was locked. "What's beyond this wall?" she thought. The little girl went to Ben, the gardener, and told him to open the door immediately. "I can't," he answered. "No one can do it since your aunt died 10 years ago. That was her garden." Mary returned to the house, and she slammed the door because she was very angry with Ben. Suddenly, she heard a cry in the distance. "Where is it coming from?" she thought to herself. There was a massive door at the end of the corridor. Mary opened it and saw a very pale boy lying in a big bed. "Who are you?" they both asked each other. Mary discovered that the boy was her cousin Colin, her uncle's son. They were the same age. Colin was very ill, and he never left his room. The windows had been closed shut, and he never saw the sunlight. Mary promised to visit him every day. The very next day, while she was in her room, Mary heard a pecking at the window. It was the robin, and he was carrying a key in his beak. "Thank you, little friend," said Mary, smiling. Then she ran to the garden. Mary looked around. She was alone. The key easily unlocked the door. Mary passed through the thick ivy branches. She was in the garden. It was so big! The little girl saw a frozen fountain, beautiful statues, and a lot of tall and spooky-looking trees. The ground was all covered by dry leaves. How sad! Suddenly, Mary saw someone. He was an odd-looking boy, and with him were 2 squirrels, a fox, and a crow. "Who are you, and what do you want?" Mary asked. "I'm Dickon, Martha's little brother," he answered, smiling. Dickon could talk to animals and knew all about nature. He was charming. Mary trusted him, and they soon became friends. They explored the secret garden together. "It's all dead," Mary said, hopelessly. "Not at all," Dickon replied. "This garden is as alive as you or me. It will be amazing when the spring will come. The trees, the plants, and the flowers are resting under the snow." Weeks went by so quickly. Every morning, Mary met with Dickon, and they entered the secret garden to plant new seeds and to water the tiny buds. In the evening, she had dinner with her cousin Colin, and she described the garden which was growing day by day. The spring finally came. The snow melted under the sun. The fresh grass was bright green. The robin and the other birds sang on the branches. Mary decided to take Colin into the secret garden so they might play together. One day, Mary and Colin went secretly outside. Mrs. Medlock would never allow Colin to go out of his room. She thought he was too ill, but he wasn't. The garden was full of sweet smells and melodies. Pink and white roses grew and blossomed everywhere. Colin never felt so happy. Mary and Colin were having such a wonderful time in the garden, they didn't realize that the door to the garden had been left open. When Mrs. Medlock discovered them in the garden, she was furious. But then Lord Craven, who had never seen his son happier and healthier before, finally understood that Colin was fine and that he needed to play outside to feel better. So together they all played and laughed in the garden, which was not secret any more. The end.